This could essentially have been the shot that was the precursor to the Russia-Ukraine war, where Russia basically decided that they were going to be able to shoot down any Ukrainian fighter jet that crossed into its territory. And this was a test just to make sure prior to the start of the Russia-Ukraine war. What's up, everybody? Ryan here. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to dive into the shot that was heard around Europe. It's a lesser known shot, and this is potentially the precursor to the Russia-Ukraine war. This is a story of when Russia actually shot down a Ukrainian Su-27 piloted by one of the most highly decorated Ukrainian fighter pilots of all time. This pilot was shot down by a Russian SAM system, and in this story we're going to get into the details of how it happened, why it happened, and how potentially this was the precursor to Russia's entrance into the war with Ukraine. And the lessons learned from this engagement is something that they continue to use to this day. On March 25th, 2018, a Ukrainian fighter pilot by the name of Vladimir Yanchenko took off in a Sukhoi Su-27 from a Ukrainian airfield in an undisclosed location. The mission remains highly classified, but it could also be categorized as a routine patrol where the Su-27 may have been collecting intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance of the Black Sea Fleet owned by Russia, which is based in a town on the outskirts of Crimea, which is a place that Russia annexed back in 2014. And Russia annexed Crimea back in 2014 because they see it as a strategic location. Essentially, their entire navy is based out of Crimea, so protecting it, knowing the whereabouts of any fighter jet getting close to it, are essentially important to the Russian Navy security. Vladimir took off in his Su-27, potentially with a wingman, that has been undisclosed information as well, and began to execute his patrol mission along the Black Sea. His mission started out as any mission would, being lit up by certain SAM sites, surface-to-air missile sites in Russia, but staying just outside the reach and remaining within the container of airspace that Vladimir believed would keep his Su-27 safe from Russian surface-to-air missiles. And speaking of Russian surface-to-air missiles, the missile that ended up blowing Vladimir out of the sky and potentially being the precursor to the Russia-Ukraine conflict as far as how Russia would fight fighter jets in that conflict was a Russian S-400, which is a SAM system that has been evolved over time. And that SAM system, the S-400 missile, it's organized around the 30K6E administration system, which can coordinate 8 divisions of radars. And it has a control center that is also attached to a vehicle. It uses a panoramic radar with 360-degree protection, and it has a 600-kilometer, 370 nautical mile range, and it also includes protection against jamming. Now, the missiles itself don't necessarily have the 370 nautical mile range, but the radar can look out that far. So with the radar looking out that far, then it just becomes incumbent upon the engineers to build a missile that can actually reach out to 370 nautical miles, because the engineers who've built the radar are basically saying, hey, look, we got this radar that can look out that far. Now build something that can reach out and touch a target that far. But a missile that's going to go out that far is going to be massive. And it's worth saying that Russia continually builds and updates missiles that can attach to that panoramic radar array. So there could be the possibility that Vladimir was remaining outside of the threat detection ring of the S-400, but a newer version of that missile was strapped onto the phased array radar, or the radar, the panoramic sensor, whatever you want to call it. That day they may have been testing something new that the Ukrainian fighter pilot literally couldn't defend against because he didn't know it existed. And these things can also be mobile. So the S-400 can be strapped on the back of a tank, on the back of a large personnel carrier, whatever the case may be, and it can be moved to locations that Vladimir might not have known. And a lot of times these radar operators, since that radar can go out and look so far, they were actually looking inside of Ukraine territory for months, seeing fighter jets take off and seeing the exact location where they go to. So it's kind of the old adage of change your pattern of life. When you look at any type of surveillance, any type of spy routine, you look for a pattern of life to see where people are going, to see what they're doing, to see what time of day they leave their house, what time of day they eat lunch, what time of day they work out. The different travels that they go to are typically based on a certain time of day. And it's the same thing when it comes to fighter jets, potentially. That's why you should switch it up. But if a fighter jet is continually flying over the same area, in this case, the Black Sea, where these Su-27s were doing their routine missions, now Russia's sitting there just watching this happen. And that is a dangerous situation for pilots like Vladimir, who are essentially sitting ducks because these radars are moving into a position where they can detect these aircraft pretty much from takeoff. And then if there is a larger weapon system attached to it that you might not have studied, that you might not be prepared for, now you're basically just a sitting duck sitting there in a kill zone that you didn't know existed. And it's also worth saying that these S-400s can operate in battalions, so multiple missiles, and a lot of times these missile operators will launch two. And the reason they do that is because fighter jets and fighter pilots, we're trained to have the ability to dodge missiles. However, once you dodge that first missile, you deplete a ton of your energy, which is why after dodging a missile, the first thing you do is you go two forward, which means you unload by pushing forward on the stick and you go max afterburner to get as fast as possible, and you start looking for that second missile. Now, these radar operators know that we're doing that, and the reason we're doing that is because we're low on energy, so we need to get fast quick. But if that second missile is following relatively closely behind that first missile, then you don't really have a chance. So if this was the case with Vladimir, he could have dodged the first missile, but that second one is going to be sitting there waiting for him because these things operate in packs, like a pack of wolves roaming around. So as Vladimir got into the middle of his mission, he began to inch closer and closer towards where he would eventually be shot down, and he was getting closer to the Russian fleet in the Black Sea. Now, most likely Russia waited to get the Su-27 in a range where they knew it was in the heart of the envelope that they could fire. And now in Ukraine, they've collected information from shooting down that Su-27, and they also have their own Su-27s that they can put up and test against their own S-400s. So for them, it's really easy for them to spot the Su-27 on a radar and to understand it's not theirs due to country of origin where it took off from. So essentially everything was lining up to go against Vladimir in this case. And the Imperial Russian Navy is based out of Crimea, so these S-400s could even be attached to different warships, and who knows, these warships might have classified longer range missiles that the Ukrainians didn't know about. But at the end of the day, it's primarily important for the Russians to protect their Black Sea fleet and the Imperial Russian Navy that's there, because again, that's one of the most strategic centers for them to control the sea in that area, to control the Mediterranean Sea, and to control the Sea of Azov. At the end of the day, Russia is going to put everything they can into protecting that area, and that includes these massive amounts of Russian SAM systems. So at the end of the day, when Vladimir got into this threat ring, it was pretty much a situation that he was never going to get out of, because Russia is going to make sure that if a fighter jet gets close enough to their Black Sea fleet, they're going to take it down. So did Russia use this as information to then go and start taking down Su-27s in the Russia-Ukraine war? Well, absolutely, in my opinion. And any engagement that happens, what a fighter pilot will do, or what a operator of a weapon system will do, like a missile operator, like at Red Flag, for example, they'll give a debrief. So they'll go into intelligence and they'll say, hey, this is the range I saw the aircraft at. This is when I shot them. This is when I noted them being shot down. This is when they splashed, so when they actually landed in the ocean or on land. And that information is all passed directly to Intel, who then disseminates it out into the different fighter squadrons. So most likely all the information from the shootdown of Vladimir was then used for follow-on attacks on Russian Su-27s and MiG-29s, and that's potentially the exact same weapon system that took down the Grey Wolf, who was flying a Su-27 in the Ukraine war when it first kicked off. He's one of the most accomplished fighter pilots that there are, but again, if there's information on how to take down his Su-27 coming from this incident in 2018, then at the end of the day, it's kind of like he's fighting a losing battle. So thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this breakdown. Let me know if you want to hear more stories like this in the comments below. And hey, dominate that like button. It just feels good. It helps support me. It helps build the channel. And then hey, maxafterburner.co if you want some sweet threads and you want to support the channel. It'd mean a lot. Check out another video and I'll see you on that video. Most of all, have a great day.